The rain had just stopped when Adwoa Baidu came home to an empty flat. The door creaked like it always did, but the silence behind it felt different this time. Her husband's suitcase was gone. His shoes, his cologne on the dresser, even his favorite spoon, vanished. In their place, a note written on a torn prayer meeting flyer. "You deserve better. I can't be that man." She stood still, wrapper damp from the rain, palms trembling. Not a single tear came. She didn't scream. She sat on the edge of their rusted metal bed frame and stared at the cracked ceiling, where a cobweb fluttered in the breeze. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of prayers, hospitals, anointed oils, blame, whispers, the shame of being barren. The long church pews that suddenly felt like witness boxes, the gossip from women who once envied her wedding. Now, she was 33, alone, with nothing but a primary school teaching job and an aging mother in the village who didn't know the truth yet. For 2 days, she didn't eat. She watered her hibiscus plant and swept the compound, nodding at neighbors like nothing had changed. But something had cracked wide open inside her. On the 3rd day, she folded her hair into a scarf, put on her flats, and walked to the Candid Child Center. She had seen the flyer weeks ago. Volunteers needed. She didn't know what she was seeking, but something inside whispered, "Go where the broken go." She didn't know it yet, but that day she was walking toward the 5 girls who would one day call her Mama. The Candid Child Center stood behind a faded gate, painted over with flowers now chipped by sun and time. Inside, the air smelled of powdered milk and pencil shavings. Laughter echoed through cracked walls. Adwoa stepped in, unsure of what to expect, heart heavy but open. Children ran barefoot across the courtyard, chasing bubbles from a soap dish. One girl stood alone by a mural of the Ghana flag, arms folded, eyes sharp. That was Ifiwa, age 11, already too protective for her own childhood. In the shade of a neem tree sat aisle, nose deep in a battered science book, legs crossed like a scholar. Near the swing, 2 girls pushed each other, giggling and plotting with matching dimples. Serwa and Sika, the 8-year-old twins with eyes that sparkled mischief. And then there was Mansa, 4 years old, curled up under a bench, silent, clutching a broken doll with one eye. She didn't speak, just watched. The center's coordinator explained their story. A gas explosion had taken their neighborhood. No known relatives had stepped forward. The government would eventually move them to a larger orphanage. No guarantees, no promises. As Adwoa swept the playroom and handed out bananas, something shifted. Not pity, not charity, recognition. These girls weren't incomplete. They were unchosen. By the end of the week, Mansa had crawled into her lap. The twins had braided her scarf into knots. Al began correcting her Fanti accent, and Ifiwa stood guard whenever she walked in. Adwoa didn't know how to mother, but she knew how to show up. She looked at them, all 5, and whispered, "If no one will, I will." Everyone said she was mad. Her landlord warned her the girls would bring trouble. Her church friend clutched her Bible tighter, whispering that Adwoa was playing God. Even her own mother, voice trembling through the crackly phone line from Asamankes, asked, "Why borrow sorrow, Adwoa?" But the girls had already carved space into her life. She woke thinking of their faces. She budgeted meals with their tiny appetites in mind. The silence in her Adabraka flat no longer felt peaceful. It felt empty. She sold her only gold chain and started the adoption process. The social worker at the Ministry of Gender tilted her head, confused. All 5. Adwoa smiled nervously. "They are already mine in my spirit. I just need the paper to catch up." It wasn't easy. There were forms, inspections, interrogations. A visit from a government official who tapped the cracked walls of a kitchen and raised an eyebrow at the bucket she used as a fridge. "You live alone on a teacher's salary." Adwoa answered with calm, "Yes, but we will live with love." By month's end, she had converted her bedroom into a bunk space. A friend donated second-hand mattresses. The twins painted stars on the walls. Al brought her books. Ifiwa placed her small trunk by the door like a guard on duty. On the day the papers came through, Mansa spoke her first word since the accident. "Mama." Adwoa froze. The world stood still. She crouched beside her, tears falling onto the child's cheeks. "Yes, Mansa," she whispered. "Mama is here." The Adabraka flat transformed overnight. Gone was the silence. In its place came footsteps at dawn, laughter during chores, and arguments over toothbrushes. Adwoa's once orderly one-bedroom now pulsed with life. 5 girls, 1 woman, a miracle stitched together with threadbare curtains and boundless faith. In the mornings, Adwoa tied headscarves while refereeing cereal wars. Sirwa always snuck extra sugar. Ifiwa made sure the others brushed their teeth, twice. I'll tape multiplication charts to the wardrobe. The twins danced the high life on the radio. Mansa, the baby, shadowed Adwoa everywhere, quiet but watching. Their tiny kitchen became a classroom of lessons beyond books: how to peel yam without waste, how to share single-boiled egg 5 ways. Every corner held memories in the making: chalk drawings on the wall, mismatched socks under the bunk bed, and bedtime prayers said in 5 distinct voices. But it wasn't always easy. There were days Adwoa returned from work too tired to smile. Days when Ify was shut down completely, when I got teased at school for being the orphan with no father, when Sir and Sika stole pure water from a kiosk and blamed each other. Nights when Mansa still woke up screaming. Still, Adwoa never raised a hand. She raised her voice sometimes, yes, but always with love, always with open arms after. One night, as rain tapped the windows and they all lay squeezed on a mattress during a blackout, Ifiwa whispered, "We're not really your blood." Adwoa stroked her braided hair and replied, "No, you're my heart." The generator across the street buzzed alive, but inside their flat, it was already bright. The years moved like traffic on a rainy Accra morning, slow, chaotic, but always forward. Ifiwa hit 13 and stopped calling Adwoa Mama in public. Al buried herself in books, hiding from boys who called her Robot Girl. The twins began sneaking lipstick into school and arguing over who wore it better. And Mansa, still quiet, would only speak when she sang, her voice now delicate and haunting. Adwoa felt the shift. Hugs grew rare. Doors slammed more often. The flat became louder with opinions and heavier with questions she didn't always have answers to. Why didn't my real mother come back? Why do we have to share everything? Why do the rich girls laugh at our shoes? One evening, Ifiwa didn't come home. Panic rattled Adwoa's bones as she searched the neighborhood, asking every kiosk auntie and trotro driver. She found Ifiwa in a back alley, crying beside a broken phone. She'd tried to call the number listed in her old file. It no longer existed. Adwoa didn't scold. She sat on the wet ground beside her, pulled the girl close, and whispered, "I'm not her, but I'm here." The next day, Ifiwa left a note on Adwoa's pillow. "I'm sorry. I was just trying to find the pieces." There were victories, too. I won a citywide science quiz. The twins started making beaded bracelets and selling them at the market. Mansa began humming lullabies while washing dishes. But Adwoa often lay awake at night, wondering if she was enough. Then one Sunday at church, during testimony time, Sirwa tugged her sleeve. "Mama," she whispered, "can we go up with you?" And just like that, 5 girls stood beside one woman, in front of a congregation that once whispered behind her back. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Change came like sunrise, quiet, steady, unstoppable. Ifiwa, now 17, stood in front of a packed auditorium at the Accra Youth Policy Forum. She spoke with fire about displaced children, her voice firm, eyes fierce. When she said, "Every child deserves a place to come home to," Adwoa wept in the back row. Al built a miniature solar generator for her school science fair. Her quiet mind, once underestimated, won first place and an invitation to the University of Ghana STEM camp. The same teachers who once said she was too withdrawn now called her genius. Sirwa and Sika, always inseparable, launched a thrift fashion page on Instagram. In 6 months, it gained thousands of followers. They styled outfits with second-hand Ken and Accra, taking photos against their compound wall. Vogue Africa reposted them with a caption, "Sister Style, Pure Fire." And Mansa, now 9, joined the church choir. On Easter Sunday, she stepped forward with trembling hands and sang, "Oi." Her voice, gentle, haunting, brought the congregation to tears. It was the first time she stood alone without clutching Adwoa's skirt. Back at the Adabraka flat, life was still simple. Meals shared on the floor, power cuts at night, a single fan spinning for 6. But now, the walls held awards, drawings, newspaper clippings, and photos. Each item whispered, "We came from brokenness, but we didn't stay there." Adwoa never chased attention. But one day, a journalist knocked. "We're profiling women who build legacies. May we feature you?" Adwoa smiled softly. "Only if you include their names too." Adwoa turned 60 with little fuss. No grand party, no asui-bai, just quiet thanks and warm wakey with the girls. Or so she thought. That morning, Ifiwa arrived from Abuja in a flowing Kent dress, beaming. Al came from Kumasi, Mansa in her hand. Serwa and Sika wore matching gold head wraps, phones in hand, recording everything. They insisted Adwoa dress up, head wrap, coral beads, white lace. They blindfolded her and drove. When the cloth came off, she stood before a modest cream-colored house in Cantonments, nestled between mango trees, sunlight bouncing off its tiled roof. A gold plaque on the gate read, "Baidu House, where daughters become queens." She gasped. Inside, sunlight poured through wide windows. There was a music room for Mansa, a studio space for Isle, and a fashion nook for the twins. Ifiwa had framed a photo of them all from the Candy Center, now mounted above the fireplace. Tears streamed down Adwoa's face. "But how?" she whispered. "We saved, worked, and partnered," Ifiwa said. "You gave us a home when you had nothing. This is us giving back." They led her to a garden where journalists, friends, and church members waited. A small podium stood beside a banner, honoring the woman who mothered a nation. Adwoa tried to speak, but her voice broke. Sika handed her a white cloth to dab her tears. "We know you don't like cameras," Serwa teased, "but you'll want this one in your scrap book." In that moment, standing before 5 daughters, now women, Adwoa realized she hadn't raised orphans. She had raised a legacy. Years had passed. The Cantonments home now echoed with the laughter of grandchildren. Ifiwa ran a foundation for displaced girls. Al lectured at Legan. Serwa and Sika opened a boutique in Osu. Mansa toured cities, her voice healing hearts far beyond Ghana. Adwoa Baidu spent her mornings in the garden, watering hibiscus and sipping tea. Her hands, once worn by struggle, now trembled only with age, not worry. One Saturday, they gathered at the Jamestown beachfront, where it had all begun, not to mourn, but to celebrate. A film crew set up cameras beneath the lighthouse. A banner flapped in the sea breeze. "The Queen Who Chose Them," a documentary tribute. Locals sat on wooden benches. Fishermen paused to watch. Reporters whispered her name like a psalm. As the documentary played, scenes unfolded, Adwoa mopping floors at Kanda, braiding hair by candlelight, laughing on a mat with 5 little girls in school uniforms too big for their frames. When the credits rolled, the crowd stood, clapping until their hands stung. Adwoa sat beside Mansa, now a woman, her head on her shoulder. A camera caught her whispering, "I didn't do anything special." Mansa replied, "You made room. That's more than most queens ever do." A breeze swept across the water. Children ran barefoot across the sand. One held a flyer, "Homes of Hope, Building Love Beyond Blood." Adwoa smiled. She didn't need a crown. She had daughters, and they would carry her name long after the sea forgot its salt.